Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well, and I hope you're having an amazing day so far. It's Friday, we're at the weekend. I had a small break yesterday from my live sessions because I was up in Sheffield, up north, and it was absolutely amazing. So, today we have got Tim Earle, who is a property consultant who consults property investors from the Far East to buy properties in the UK. And we're going to know more about what do the property investors who are based in the Far East currently think about the property market in the UK. Where are they investing? What are they investing in? It would be good to get all that feedback. So we are sending him the invite. Tim,
Hey,
how are
afternoon.
you? Good,
I'm
good.
very well, Arza. How are you doing?
Good, all is well. Firstly, thank you so much for coming on this live, taking out your time to share the knowledge and share the positivity with all of us out here today in what you do and how you've built your career in the property world. So thank you for taking out your time.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'd also like to say that I really do admire your initiative in putting these together. I think it's a great idea during this period when people are looking for a little bit of entertainment, but some interest and some inspiration as well. So thank you very much
Absolutely.
for inviting me to do this with you today.
Not a problem. Before we move forward, Tim, if you can introduce yourself as to who you are and what you do so that we can get the conversation going.
Sure. So, as you might already be aware from Mataz's introduction, my name is Tim Earle. I'm the director of a company called Starfish Property Investments, and we are involved predominantly in UK property. And we also have a focus on assisting Chinese investors in the main, Chinese investors in both Hong Kong and mainland China, to really explore and understand the UK market. Education is a big part of what we do and how we initially engage with those who eventually, hopefully, choose to become clients. And that, as I say, it covers all sectors of the UK market.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. So, Tim, what I always ask my guest firstly that come on here, I want to take you a few years back. You're quite young already, but take you a few years back into your childhood, into your teenage time. You know, when we were growing up as kids, we always aspired to be someone like a doctor or lawyer or an architect, an engineer, all these big careers that we see, police officer, fire brigade, all that kind of stuff. We see that in front of us and we always think that one day I might become that, as a child. Did you always have that aspiration of being someone like that, or from the start you were property driven and you wanted to get into property?
That's a great starting question. For me, it's probably everything that you wouldn't expect. So the only police officers I came into contact with when I was growing up was generally seeing them on the council estate where I
Okay.
grew up, a place called the Coley Park Estate in Reading in
Okay.
Berkshire.
Okay.
And as you might be able to tell from the way I'm opening up this answer to your question, is that that wasn't the best part of Reading necessarily to grow up in. So my background was, working class, council estate, pretty tasty place at times, but never came into any real harm. But it was a working class council estate background. And to answer your question, my first love as a kid in life was always music, and
Wow.
specifically, the instrument that I gravitated towards was the drums.
Okay.
And my family was quite musical. My dad was a singer and a guitarist. My older brother was also a musician. He was a bass player.
Okay.
My brother is 7 years older than me. So he was already out with my dad doing gigs, around the Reading area. I was becoming more and more interested in music and the drums, and I would go to the gigs, and I started playing. My mum tells me around sort of 2, 3 years of age at the kitchen table with the top
Yep.
of.
Yep. 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 Yep.
But I got my first drum kit when I was 9, so I joined the family duo, and that became a
Okay.
trio. And I
Trio.
started playing. Absolutely, yeah. It was called Double Vision when it was just my
Okay.
brother and my dad. And I'm not sure what we did with it. I don't think we changed the name actually when I joined, but it became Triple Vision, if there is such a thing. So, so my background is actually completely different to what I do now. All I cared about as a kid and as a young adult was music and the drums. And I started playing and getting paid for it when I was 9 years old, and I kept that up
Wow.
until my early 30s. And I did
And
every.
and you were basically a working entrepreneur since the age of 9.
Yep, started doing gigs with my dad's band when I was 9. Started to get paid,
How
and
about how about school, college, university? Did that have an effect on your studies, or it was more towards the music that you were driven to than the studies?
yeah, I think I got away in school just being good at things like English and art, math, science, those kind of things. I never really had an interest or enjoyed. And once I got to sort of, about 15 years of age, all I wanted to do was get out of school so that I could just pursue my music. And I actually left
Absolutely.
school. I guess I left school about 3 months early, so I did leave school at age 15. So I'm
Okay.
not a product of a privileged background. I don't have I didn't quite actually finish secondary school. I certainly
Yep.
don't have college or university education.
Yep.
And so I left school around about 3 months early. I was playing, but I basically left to start my first
But
full-time
you but
job.
you went into pursuing your musical career that you always looked at.
Yeah, I mean, I've had about 2 day jobs in my entire life, working for like a company, and that was the first one when I was 15, shoveling industrial pins in a factory of a company that my mum was the PA to the managing director of.
Okay.
I didn't stay there very long. I then had another sort of slightly admin type job for about 6 months when I guess I was 17, and pretty
Okay.
much from that point, I just played. I did gigs. I started to teach, and I pursued that up until my early 30s. I was a working musician, touring all over the UK, doing about 200 shows per year. Um,
Wow.
but really just stuck at a working musician level. I'd always
Okay.
aspired to do better than that. A number of my friends were doing gigs with famous artists and famous bands. They had started to sort of recommend me. So a couple of things nearly happened by getting recommendations from those people who were playing for Take That and M People and various other artists. But
If
it
you
didn't.
had to if you had to play for a band, which band would that be?
Oh, okay. I've always enjoyed every style of music because as a musician, I do and studied and learn how to play. So
Okay.
really everything. So but really, I was just trying to aspire to play with major artists and get, but it didn't happen. And I got to a stage where I was in my very early 30s, and there's a line in a movie called Pulp Fiction, which kind of really stuck in my head, where the character Bruce Willis is being brought back out of retirement to be in this fight, and it's going to be staged, and the guy
Yep.
that set
Yep.
him up for this basically is trying to convince him to do this and lose the
Yep.
fight and make
Yep.
some money. And the line that he said to him, it's pretty brutal, but he said to him, if you were going to make it, you would have made it by now. And I was in my early 30s. I was stuck as a working musician. It had got to the point where even though I was playing, I might as well have been laying tarmac on the roads because I was not in a happy place. I was never home. I was always exhausted. I was always playing, and I was stuck.
So you were kind of you were finding yourself in a dead end kind of, that treadmill kind of just running, but not getting to a destination.
Yeah, and I was going through the motions, every night doing the same show. It wasn't creative. It wasn't why I started to play the drums. And I said, look, you're either going to do this for another year, and this was coming up towards the end of 1 year. You're either going to do this for another year, or you're going to quit and you're going to do something else. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but what I did know that I could not continue to do what I was doing for another year. So I gave in my notice to the show that I was doing. I played out, the last few sort of gigs, and got to the start of, I guess we're talking 2003, and quit. Did the very last show down on the South Coast.
Did you feel really emotional about it, because that was something that you pursued all your life, and up till the age of 30, if you're doing something from the age of 9, you want to get to somewhere in life and show to the world that you are a good artist, you're an amazing artist. But did you feel emotional about that you couldn't get there and you had to start something else because you didn't get the time for yourself, for your family, spend time with your friends, all that kind of stuff? Did you have that emotion in you?
That was a process that led up to making that decision. So I worked through all of that in the period leading up to it. And, the very final show I did, our normal routine would be I would leave my house. I would drive to where the show departed from in the show vehicle. In the morning, we would drive hours to the venue. We would set up in the afternoon, do the sound check. We would then probably not do the show until midnight because we're playing clubs and different kind of places. And then you get home at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. That was a normal day, and this was a typical day. So I left that last show, got back to my car like 4 a.m. in the morning, drove home, knowing that I was not going to have to do that again. And it was a great feeling because I said to myself, whatever I do going forward, and at this stage I had no idea, I'm never going to be at the beck and call of anybody else. I'm never going to suffer fools and idiots. And I'm never going to work with people that life is too short to bear. And so what I said to myself is, whatever I do, it's going to be within my own thing that I'm going to enjoy and not have to be stuck. It's kind of like the Spice Girls on Acid story, a little bit like that. We've heard all those stories.
But this is what inspiration is, right? This is what inspiration is, because a lot of people get into that dead end job, and whether it be working for themselves, but you're just like constantly running, but not getting anywhere. But then you decided to leave that at the age of early 30s. And was property, did you fall into it, or were you sort of within that year of you quitting your music, were you looking at the property side?
It actually occurred to me more and more when I was thinking about quitting the music. It occurred to me more and more that I'd been interested and had a sort of a magnetic draw to property, but I'd never actually analysed it or formalised it. So there was something about the concept of property that had always obviously signified some degree of security, and maybe because I must say I was always really well looked after. My mum and my dad, to a certain degree, up until a certain period, always looked after. Never hungry, never. But there was sort of maybe something in my background, sort of growing up just on a council estate, and sort of being aware of other kids in school that had more of a middle class background, had nicer houses. You would go and visit, and they would be in nicer parts of town. And I think that when I think about it now, I go back, I think that property has always represented an aspiration to security. But I think that was largely subconscious in my, sort of childhood, and maybe while I was sort of so. But I'm a nightmare, just like probably all of us are. I'm a nightmare to be a passenger in a car with, because I'm driving down and I'm just looking. It's for sale boards, properties with a skip outside. I'm just, whatever it is, you're always on the look. Exactly.
So
So it's interesting how that maybe was always there, and I guess that I would describe property as my main focus and occupation in life, and probably my second love. Music being my first. I mean,
first,
relationship, family
yep, yep,
aside,
yep, yep.
talk about what we do, then property is something I would say
You were drawn
relatively.
towards.
Yeah, yeah, because it is passion. That's where it has to come
Absolutely,
from, a place
absolutely,
of interest and passion, and then there's a number of things that underlie that interest and that motivation to be involved, I think.
absolutely. So you got into property. What made you realize that rather
Was it
than
covering over the corporate
rather
bank there, by the way?
rather than consulting people, which you do, you consult investors all around the world, but your main base is consulting Southeast Asians, Chinese, Hong Kong, all that Far East resident to invest their funds in the UK. How did you
Mm.
fall into that? I mean, was that a path you chose, or was that someone's sort of inspiration to you that, you could get into the Far East and consult those people to invest here? How did that come about in your life?
Okay, well, when I quit the music, within a year, I did a couple of different things, to pay my mortgage and pay my bills, including starting to teach drums, which I actually kept up for, a decade,
Okay.
just to pass it on. But within that first year, I bought my first two properties, just starting
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Um, Refurbs. All I knew about property is, oh, there's a property, looks like a little bit run down. Maybe I can buy it. Maybe I can do it up. Maybe I can sell it and make a profit. Which,
Yeah.
which on the first two properties, but it was a very modest profit, and it was an awful lot of hard work. And I guess I cut my nails by trying to do as much of that work as I could myself as well. So I definitely started from the ground up.
Okay.
Hand sanding three
Yep.
floors of Victorian wooden banisters in the middle of December in a
Wow.
house with no central heating. So all of that kind of
Ooh.
stuff that you think that you need to do yourself to save money, to make more
To
money, but
maximize the profits.
yeah, but you just slow the whole thing down, right? And it just takes forever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But that
Absolutely.
was
It's
that that
it's
that was
it's
fun.
everything is a learning curve. If you don't learn, then you can't consult someone in that area, because you've done it. You've gone inside, you've done everything, like sanding the wooden banisters,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
A lot,
absolutely.
a lot of people,
Yeah,
would pay the builders, cut their profit because they want to move on with time and convenience and all that kind of stuff, and move on to other projects. But
yeah,
everyone has their pick, right? Whether they want to do their developments themselves, or whether they want to get a builder or contractor to get that done. So it's
yeah.
all
It
hard
was,
work,
it was,
right? But it pays off.
yeah, it was a combination of sort of, more youthful energy than I have now, and a bit of naivety, of course. But it served its purpose because, during that time I was looking around and, seeing people that were apparently much more successful than me, dressed quite nicely, kept their fingernails nice and clean. And I thought, okay, what am I missing here? And this is like 03, 04. So this is like the birth of the property networking events. There weren't that many. This was we're sort of 10 years into buy-to-let mortgages. So
Yep,
it's an
yep,
established,
yep.
but that whole thing. So I just started to self-educate. But I'm going to answer your question about how the relationship with the East came around. But it led through initially just being a property investor,
Gotcha.
landlord, for myself. And after I'd done these first couple of refurbs, I self-educated. I went to property. I figured out that people were buying property, sought support of the banks right up until maybe mid 2008. It was a problem to spend all of your time
Yep,
trying to find properties that you could buy at maybe 60% of what you felt was their
yep,
market value.
yep.
Uh, Buy it through any means necessary, and then immediately remortgage at 85% loan to value. Remember those
Of
days
course.
if you're as old as I. So what I did is I continued to then buy properties, which I actually still have today. But using that method of basically not leaving any money in, getting some money out, moving on to the next one. But then we hit the global financial crisis, which really started to impact in the UK a little bit later than the US, and
Yep.
lenders stopped, basically allowing you to buy property in the style to which I was accustomed. It became what you paid for a property is what a surveyor would value it at. So it just became problematic. And by this time, I'd actually sort of started to really research and diversify into overseas markets. So started in diversified into overseas. Starfish was sort of conceived around about 2009, ostensibly to offer non-UK property investment, because the way things were in the UK, my view at the time was, there's going to be more opportunity, more growth, probably in overseas markets.
Do you think people were at that point in the global financial crisis in 2008? Did you see people more investing within their own countries rather than outside because of the safety and the security and the lending and all that kind of stuff? Did you see that impact?
It was more about the opportunity that was being created in overseas markets, because I guess particularly if we look at the effect on the housing market in the US compared to the UK, huge difference. I mean, I believe the general consensus that the average price corrections of UK property was an average of maybe 15% maximum,
Of course.
more in some places, less in others. But in the US, it was a wipeout. So probably for about 2 years, my core business was literally Central Florida property. If anybody's watched the movie The Big Short, that's a great historical, entertaining overview of what occurred with subprime lending, which we also had here. We had lenders, lending, the Northern Rocks, etc., lending you up to 100%.
Exactly. I mean, you're not the first person to say this. You're not the first person to say this on my live session. I've had so many people talk about Northern Rock and their mortgages and all that kind of stuff. So how did that lead on to you moving into the Far East and then looking at that sector?
It did. So I started to sort of offer overseas locations. Florida became a big one. And what started to happen, that was kind of like, the not the beginning, but it was relatively early stages of sort of online marketing. Not really so much the social media marketing that we have today, but the online global platforms. And what that meant is that I was able to start reaching buyers, investors from all around the world. We were doing Florida properties, previous selling price, one-bed condos near to Disney, previous selling price, $250,000. Here I am flipping them out in 09, 010, early part of 011 for $25,000 for cash. So literally, single family homes in Kissimmee, three for $45,000 US. So I was working with a really good, locally based realtor in Orlando, specialized in bank foreclosures. And he would send them over to me. I would package them up. I would ping them out. I would list them on the online property platform. And people from all around the world would make inquiries, and they would buy sight unseen. So that became a really good, sort of part of what I was doing. And I think that if I hadn't diversified and I'd remained solely involved in UK property, that might have been quite a lean period for me, as it would have been as it obviously was for a lot of people. I was sitting on.
For you, the key was diversification during that time, so that it could take you through that time, and you didn't feel the pinch of the credit crunch.
Yes.
And then you started consulting the Far East to buy properties in the UK, in the US, and all that sort of stuff. So today, forwarding yourself onto 2020, how is the Far East seeing the UK or the Western property market for investment purposes? What are their thoughts on it?
Okay. it's quite a broad answer, but effectively what
And
happened is,
obviously, we saw the protests and everything in Hong Kong as well in the late 2019 sort of time with COVID, starting from China in Wuhan, and then gradually taking its spread all over the world. Uh, how This is what I'm trying to get at is how are they now perceiving the UK property market and the Western?
yeah, so I think that, we've got a couple of really interesting things to look at in recent years. One is obviously the 3 years at least of the Brexit aftermath. Not the technical withdrawal, but the
Yeah,
lead up.
yeah,
We've got that. We've also got obviously the situation which is affecting all of us globally. The thing that's interesting is that when we talk about Chinese investors, I usually make the distinction between Hong Kong investors, private and institutional, and mainland Chinese ones. Although obviously, as we can see, that is one country, but with at least until recent times, two systems. So there is a different culture and mentality in a place like Hong Kong
okay,
compared to mainland China. I suppose this is maybe a little bit of a silly thing to say, but the difference between thought process maybe between British people and maybe Europeans. There's a difference.
gotcha.
There's a difference in the way that business is done. There's a difference in language. Majority of people in
Of
Hong Kong,
course, of course.
China speak Cantonese. Majority of people in mainland China speak Mandarin. But
And
the the
do you speak Cantonese or Mandarin?
I apart from a few basic words, it's not something I've ever taken the time out to really do.
Okay.
One thing that my brain is not very good at is languages, which is
Yeah.
very good at an awful lot of things. I could go on.
Sometimes it's good to stick to what you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to make an effort, with sort of the basics. That really gets appreciated. But certainly to do that fully, you have to sort of press pause on
Everything
maybe a lot of
else.
the other. I
Exactly.
mean, you are, in my view, one of the most productive, busy real estate professionals in this country, and I take my hat off to you. Your
Appreciate
output
it.
is absolutely amazing, and it reminds me on a regular basis I should try to do more. So that for me is a big challenge. But coming back to the original question, I started to go to Hong Kong in 2014, and
Okay.
I suppose one of the things I think is really interesting about these sort of chats is not so much the technicalities about what we do and deals and stuff like this. It's how you apply what you do and the way you think and the way you
Got you.
present yourself to what it
Yeah.
is that you want to achieve in life.
Yeah.
Because, as we discussed earlier in the conversation, I don't have a privileged background. I don't have a university education or a degree. Everything that I've done, both in the music first and then in property,
Learning and experience.
it's literally just been by having an idea of what you think you want to do, examining that with the benefit of talking to others that are maybe already doing what you think you want to do,
Yeah.
and then just starting to move forward and try to put those things into action. And an awful lot of that process is all up here.
Absolutely.
Even out in the external real world, when you start to put things into play, it all has to come from your mental objective and approach.
Absolutely.
But the message that I always convey to anybody is, look, if anything that I've done in my life looks, impressive is the wrong word, but if it looks like something that you're inspiring to yourself, listen, if I can do it, absolutely anybody can do
Anyone
it.
can do it.
Really.
Absolutely.
And the other main message that I really try to convey to people that I speak to who either just want to have a chat with me or ask me for advice, or people that I'm just talking to, is that we may be all in different industries, we may be in different sectors of our industries, but the one business that we're all in, without doubt, is the communication business, because absolutely
Absolutely.
everything I've ever done, from accessing an opportunity, getting a deal, making a new contact, whatever it is, comes from that initial point of being able to establish a rapport with people relatively quickly, gain their I wouldn't say trust, because that comes in time, but gain their, I suppose respect is the wrong word as well, but give people an indication that you are an authentic, serious individual with the right intention.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
from that, keeping an open mind, from that, absolutely anything can happen. And when you maybe have a little bit of luck sprinkled on that sometimes, and you meet someone that can be useful to you professionally.
Like a mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Having the right, just having the right approach, and I think that's something that some people maybe have a bit more naturally. I realized quite quickly of transition after quitting the music. I did a couple of different things just to bring some money in. Business to business marketing from home, calling up companies, trying to get through to the financial director to see if I could book in one of the reps to go and talk to them about whatever, And I realized that I was actually very, very good at that. I was very, very good at immediately just getting the attention and the
Exactly.
interest and holding
Exactly.
it, and
Exactly.
being authentic enough. And then I realized that all those years I'd spent communicating, performing, being on stage, I wasn't a shy and retiring individual.
Yep.
I probably suffer with the same confidence issues just like everybody else about different things. But on a professional level, I'm able to, comfortably and hopefully relatively naturally develop a rapport with somebody in order to start, some sort of, engagement. And
Absolutely.
that I see as a potential weakness in a lot of people who maybe didn't spend 25 years in the music business, being on stage in front of people. That's something they really struggle with.
With the
And
confidence.
yeah, but this industry that we're in requires all personality and all character types,
Absolutely.
because not everybody
Absolutely.
needs.
I
You
mean,
know,
my thing is that the the confidence and how I've grown in confidence is by doing videos. Because
right?
looking at the camera is like looking at 7 billion people. If your video is going out to 7 billion people, you are addressing yourself to them,
Yeah,
and that's the confidence that you need. And when I look at myself from 2017 of doing videos to today, I mean, I was just talking to someone yesterday and they were like, your confidence level in doing videos and talking on camera is absolutely amazing. I was like, yeah, I could compete with Tom Cruise, couldn't I? But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about yourself, your career, how you got into property, how you sort of use that experience and knowledge in now consulting, what you do with consulting Far East residents into the UK property market, into the Western property market.
yeah.
Absolutely amazing chatting with you, Tim. Thank you so much for coming on here. I mean, this live session has been full of positive advice. But on a final note, I do this with all the guests that come on here. What
Okay.
positive advice would you like to share with the world today so that they can take that on board, remove all the negative sentiment around them, and move forward in life? What would you like to share?
Okay. This would be, I guess, a little bit of a reaction to the amount of sort of guru mentor content which is out there in the world, and the stuff we see on a daily basis on LinkedIn.
Yep.
It's a great platform, but it can also lead to a bit of paralysis in individuals who haven't quite figured out what it is that they want to do yet. Because when you see so many examples of people apparently achieving great things, living amazing lives, that can actually have the opposite effect on you. It can demotivate you. So
Exactly.
what I would really, really encourage people to do is look at everything, listen to everything, hear everything, take it all on board, yes, but At the same time, don't pay too much attention to it. Concentrate on what your key passion and interest in life is, because if you do something which is in that direction, something that you can do for 20 hours a day if necessary, but doesn't feel like it, that's a really good way of figuring out what it is that you want to do. Because if you're not a people person, it's absolutely fine. There's all kinds of things that you can do in our industry where you don't have to have direct face to face and do all this relationship building.
Exactly, exactly.
You know, so it's not about everybody being the same, but it's finding out. It's kind of understanding yourself first, what you're naturally inherently good at doing and want to develop further. And then when you start to figure that out, maybe with the help of some others along the way that are heading in a similar direction, don't worry too much about what other people are doing. You know, in fact, it's probably a good idea from time to time to stop lurking at the
At other,
LinkedIn post.
this
Stop
is this
looking.
is exactly this is exactly. I mean, when I what you just said, look at other people and learn from them. And that is why I look at social media, because sometimes some people say certain points in their videos or certain way they represent their brand or certain way they speak. I take that in. Don't look at luxury cars and luxury homes and whether they're wearing Gucci, Prada, or Armani. Look at what they are doing and how they're helping the society, and take that positiveness and take that inspiration in, and sort of absorb that and use it to inspire other people. That's how I see it.
I would agree. I would agree entirely. So I think
Super.
that yeah, just understanding yourself better. Too much attention, to what others are doing, but finding your niche and then pursuing it, and being
Exactly.
a bit single-minded, a bit bloody-minded, because in this world,
Absolutely.
be
You
successful
gotta,
in
you gotta, you gotta be, you gotta be, you gotta be, you gotta be that. You gotta be a bit, just a bit selfish, just a bit.
yes,
You
yeah,
gotta
as
be
they
like,
say, all progress is made by unreasonable men and women. So yeah, if
absolutely.
somebody tells you it's ridiculous and you can't do it, if you've
Do
done
it,
your
do
due
it, and
diligence,
prove them wrong.
exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for coming on here, Tim. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. So much inspiration, so much positiveness. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Hey, you're more than welcome, Matthias. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Tim. Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Investments. Started as a musician, ended up now today being a property consultant and an investor and a landlord into properties. Super amazing inspiration. Real people out there who are doing real stuff and sharing their story. So thank you so much to Tim for coming on here and sharing that with us. Thank you to all the viewers that tuned in. It's been a pleasure to have you. Have an amazing weekend. I've got no more live sessions for today. It's a busy day today for me. Whatever you're doing, enjoy, and I shall see you back on my live sessions on Monday. Take care. Bye bye.